So, where were you born, anyhow?
Fredonia, North Dakota, on a farm about 8 miles northwest of Fredonia, in a country farm, in a kitchen floor. And I think maybe the midwife's name was Schlecht, which my dad had a cousin named that, and there were some different relatives, and I think it was one of the ladies.
Okay.
As far as I can know.
And
I was very small, don't remember.
Yeah, you don't remember. What was it like growing up as a kid on the farm?
Great. Oh, if only the kids could do that today, because like poor Betty, she's grew up in all the big cities,
Yeah.
and they don't learn nothing. They know where the bus runs. That's about it.
What was your best memories on the farm?
Well, you always visited the neighbors, and the neighbors had a bunch of kids, and we had a bunch of kids, and you always played games, ice skating, and we played hockey games with a tin can and a stick, and stick in the can, and you make a hole in the ground, and then have to knock that can till you got it beat to almost a little ball, and put it in the hole and put your stick on it, and then you got a point, and whatever team won. And then baseball, that was a big one on the farm too.
How far was your nearest neighbors?
In Fredonia, I don't remember nothing because I was only there from 1933 to 1939. So I remember when we moved. Then we moved to a place in Edgeley, right between Cullum and Edgeley, exactly in the middle. And then Dad bought a farm in Cullum, and then we moved there, and that was the rest of my parents' life. What, you asked what?
How far was the neighbors? How close were they?
Oh,
you said neighbors
well,
had a lot of kids.
Well, that would have been the Sieglers in Cullum. And I think they probably had, see, we were 6, and I suppose they were 7, 8 or something like that too. And there we played ice hockey.
Yeah.
Because there was a lake that would freeze over solid, and if it would freeze with no wind, then it was nice and smooth. But if there was a breeze, then it would be ripply, and then we would wish it would thaw a little so it would be smooth again. But then later when I went to high school, then they made a rink in Cullum. They graded an empty lot flat and then flooded it for fire department and froze it. And if it was not smooth, they would flush it, put another inch of water on it. And there everything froze fast and hard. We had tanks, for animals, this great big around 8-foot diameter, and they were probably 2.5 feet deep, and they'd freeze solid. So you had to pump the water on top of the ice, and the cows would drink it, but it would build up and up and up, and then finally, you had to almost feed them the buckets or troughs.
Okay. When did you start school?
Well, I started early because the teacher liked me so well, because I could go to school with Irvin and Lawrence, and she thought I was such a cute little guy, and so she put me in school and enrolled me when I was 4.
Wow.
Actually, and I figured out the other day, Charlie, and I have gone to school for 30 years of my life. That's a long time.
So you started at 4. And did you speak English, or what did you speak when you started school?
100% German. At Thanksgiving, she drew pictures, a teacher, and she says, "What is that?" And I said, "A boot." That's a turkey. No, you couldn't. I couldn't speak. Well, I learned the English then, and I handled it pretty good.
Did you go to college, and where did you study?
Yeah, I went through high school in Cullum, in college at Dakota Business College, and then the University of North Dakota. And then it was Normal Industrial College after I got out of the Army. And that was, when I got out of the Army, I think I went there 2 years, and I had so much math already that the teacher used me as a substitute teacher but let me teach, because he would take a day off and said, well, Lloyd, you handle the class today. And I was a student and a teacher. That was the University of North Dakota took over. It was a Normal Industrial, but it would have been like a community college.
Mm-hmm.
But then the university took it over. Western took over Bellingham College here.
Okay.
And then I went to Northwest Bible College. And then when your mother died, then I went to Faith Bible College. And then I moved to Everett, or Snohomish actually. And 7 years I studied the Bible then. And that was, I learned more there probably than all the other schools, because, well, the Bible is the greatest book on earth.
What was your first job?
My first job was after I graduated from Dakota Business College. I was a bookkeeper at Farmers Union Oil Company. And I really always was a good number man and a good bookkeeper. So he had 2 bookkeepers. He had a bookkeeper and a stock record keeper, because it was a union. And then they gave dividends to the people that had memberships. And I would go to work at 9 and I'd be done at 12 or 1. And he had promised me, I went out as the highest graduate in the university. And they put a big ad in the paper that my graduates go out on high wages. I got $265 a month. And then I worked there, and he said, well, if you take over the stock market, he said, because he said, everybody's jealous of you. He said, you only work half a day and you get more money than the gas pumpers. So he said, I'll give you more money. So I took over the stock record, and he laid that lady off. So I did 2 jobs, and he didn't give me the raise. And his name was Francis Huffman, and he was a Copenhagen tobacco chewer, and he sold it in the store as candy. I mean, with candy. I mean, in the, well, like a gas station, sell little stuff on the side. And then he didn't give me the raise, so I got mad, and I thought, that's not fair. So I stole a can of chewing tobacco, and I was driving home, and I thought, no. I stopped to take a pee because it was 135 miles, too long a trip with 35 miles an hour speed limits they had. So I stopped, and I did just like he did, took a pinch of snuff and put it in my lip, and bam, I fell on the ground. It was so strong. That was the end of my career. I never touched it again. I threw the can away, and that was it. Then I forgot about the raise. I tried smoking once too, with 1 cigarette stole a cigarette tobacco from the thrashing crew. They slept in the Haymount, and that was the same thing. I mean, I fell and dropped the eggs, because I always had to gather the eggs from the chicken barn, and that cured me for smoking. So I really never smoked or chewed, or went with girls that do. We used to have saying.
So then after your first job, what was your next job?
Wow. Well, then I went in the Army. Yeah. And then, then I went in the Army, And then I got in the Army. I had good education because I could type so good. I could type 126 words a minute without error with the old rattling typewriters with the keyboards. And so they put me on for typing dog tags, which was a very, very important position because, that was the blood type, the religions type, and if they died, that's what they stuck in their mouth, and sent a message home that their son was dead. And then I was there for several months, I don't know, 4, and then they sent me to Missouri, and then I went again, got another typing job. My Army career was good work, except for the training, because you had to take 8 weeks of basic and then 8 weeks advanced, and I was always in the top physical condition, well, a farm boy, pitching bales and working hard. Some guys couldn't climb the rope. I mean, you would climb the rope up over the top of the hill, and then I was in care of maintenance for bridge builders, caterpillars, cranes, all the big equipment for constructions. It was an engineering department. And then I didn't like Missouri. Missouri had red soil. Charlie, their soil in Missouri is red, like red brick. And then I wanted to go to Germany because the war was over and I could speak German, see, so I wanted to go there. So I put in every month for it. And he'd always deny it. The captain wouldn't let me go. He said, I'm not letting you go. He said, you're too good at a typer. So finally, he approved it. And then they shipped me to El Paso, Texas, William Bowman Army Hospital, and back in the office typing what they call it now.
The dog tags?
I was a MOS 4405, I think. And let's see what they call company clerk, I think, if I remember right. And then the war was over, and I had a bad knee, So they said, either I have an operation or I can get out of the service. And I had a buddy, he was a doctor. So he said, no, I'm going to put you in, he said, for discharge. So I did, or he did. And they discharged me honorably, and I went home. But was hunting and knocked a pheasant down, and I was running to catch him because I didn't want to shoot him again because I winged him, see, and then they could run fast. To 20907, 59th Place West, and then we went. Then that's where we prayed, and then we got that big new house. And always, the more children I had, and the more money I needed, I always got a better job and made more money. That was absolutely so clear in my life. I can never forget that. God is really good, because I tell you, I should have had about 10 more kids and I probably would be a multimillionaire. I have 11 already.
What other memories, or that's like two, you kind of threw a lot of things in there, but any other memory that stands out from Washington when you lived here?
Well, my association with Ken Cook, we, I don't know how we ever became friends. He was the largest truck dealer, in the world. One day he sold 285 trucks to Twin Valley Foods. They were those dump trucks, for hauling peas and corn and vegetables. Mm-hmm. And when Karen and I got married then we stopped there, and Karen had a wart right in the end of her nose. And he said, my goodness, he said, that's terrible. He said, a pretty girl like you and a wart on the end of the nose. He said, let's pray God heals her. So he said, we'll lay hands on her. And he's going like this, and I'm thinking, hey, that's my girlfriend or wife, was a wife by then. And he prayed. But by the time we left Mount Vernon to Marysville, she started screaming. I said, what's up, what's up? She said, give me the mirror, give me the mirror. And she turned the mirror. She said, it's gone. I said, what's gone? She says, my wart. And I looked, and it was gone to this day. Just disappeared in that 10-minute drive. And now I've got him. But I say it's my lucky one. Touch it and you might get it too, see. And let's see. Then I got, that was a miracle. I met, Ken Cooks. See, he was in the in the truck business. He was strictly trucks. But he helped me. He sold, I think I bought 185 trucks one day because they were all junk. And I chunked them out, and man, we made a lot of money on them. And then I went chunking cars. I had a picker, we call them, and you smash all the windows out, take all the wiring off and burn it so you could sell the copper, and then you had the radiator and the heater, you chop them out, chop the seats out and all the glass, and then you haul them to Seattle. We'd haul 6 down at a time. And that was big money, just chunking. I've always been a kind of a chunk guy. And we had several guys work for me. But we were busy. And then I expanded. We started buying the old cars that people abandoned. They passed a law that you couldn't if you left your cars without buying the license, you had to put it on blocks. And then a lot of people didn't know how to get rid of the cars, so they'd sell them at $25. We paid for a car. And then we'd smash them up. And some of them, where you could have fixed up and driven, but you'd have to do the title work. I know one time we had one, so we drove it home. Well, not quite home, but it's kind of like at the corner. And then at night, somebody came and stole the transmission out of it. We laughed. I mean, that's a pretty good mechanic in the dark, steal a transmission out of a car.
What is your biggest achievement, or what's given you the most joy in life?
Knowing the Lord has been the most exciting by far, because it's a life changer. It's you get the wisdom you need. You fail a lot because you get yourself in the way. But in all honesty, I have to say that's by far the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I did a lot of preaching in Skid Row missions when after I had gone to the 2 Bible schools. And then we went over, we were going to buy Gonzaga University in Spokane. Ken had a lot of money, see. And then, we were preaching and talking about the Lord on the bus. We took a bus over. And then the driver got mad, and he said, I don't want to preach in here, and he shut us up. And then somehow that thing fizzled out. And then, of course, it opened up where I formed that Lermont Corporation with Ken Cook, and that was a fantastic situation. That was one of the biggest opportunities I ever had, but we didn't get it finished, and I don't know why. We bought that old Lermont. It was up on the Fieldstone Road, and we were going to put a Bible school there. Well, it was owned by two guys, a guy named Grundy and a guy named I forget his name now. He was a friend of that boxer, a wrestler. He's the guy that sold the land to Atlantic Richfield.
Joel Douglas?
No, Joel came in later. What happened then was they got in a fight. So that's why they wanted to sell it. So we agreed to buy it. So we went to one guy and, yep, he'll sell it to us. I don't remember, 35,000 or whatever the money was. Then went to the other guy and he said he'll sell it to us. So then we went and signed the one guy up. And then the other guy said, oh, well, I'm not going to sign it. Because it's just bought from him. He said, because they both claimed ownership. And we had a deal with both of them, but then that fizzled out. So then we never did get it. And then Joel Douglas went and made a double deal on it and bought it. And that's the Bellingham Mall.
No, not the Bellingham Mall. It's Learmont Manor.
No, but he bought that and then he sold it and got the money and bought all that land from Wilder.
No, that's a different guy.
No, that was Joel Douglas. Okay.
Go ahead.
So I shot this pheasant and he went down, but they could run like crazy, see? So I chased them and I stumbled in a furrow and the gun went down in the dirt and I tore a ligament and then I had to have the operation anyhow. But I was out in the Army. The Army paid for it, which of course still bothers me to this day. This is the scar.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's almost gone. And this caused bad circulation. That's what I got that, see.
Yeah. So let me ask you here. We'll go with something else. So how old were you when you first got married? And who did you marry?
21 and a half. And your mom was 20. Let's see. Yeah, she was. But she was born 33. We got married in August, and she was 21 in November. We were both about 21. We were the same age, same class, same school. We were boy and girlfriend all the time. I lived in Cullman, went to college. She went to college then at the same one. And then I went to the service, and when I came back, see, that was like about 4 years or so. I think we were together about 7 years before. And I had 3 brother-in-laws, all named Herman, married to 3 sisters of hers. Yeah. That was kind of unusual, you know.
Yeah. What was the names of the brother-in-laws?
Well, one was Herman J. Herman. Because when they say, what's your first name? Herman. What's your last name? Herman. Well, what's your name? Well, so he said Herman J. Herman. And the other one was Gottlieb Herman. In German, that means God loves Herman. And the other one was Helmut Herman. It was, your mother was the second youngest. There was one younger, Irma, than your mother, and then
No, my mother was the youngest.
Huh?
My mother was the youngest.
No, she was second youngest.
Luella?
Yeah.
No.
Irma was younger. Oh, no.
No, Luella was the youngest, and then.
Oh, Irma was the youngest, I guess, outside of Luella.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not sure. No, I could.
Yeah.
There was Rose, Alma, Edna, Esther, Luella, and Irma. I think Irma was younger.
Luella was younger by a lot. They're a lot older than.
Oh. Well, then Luella, so there were 6 girls and 2 boys, Emil and Reuben. Janky. Played a lot of checkers. They loved checkers. They'd sit in the restaurant in the back of the cafe and set up tables there, and all the guys in the wintertime sat there playing checkers.
What are your 10 most favorite memories in Washington?
In Washington, when I got saved in August 4th, 1960. That's number one. I had a real great experience with God. Jesus came into my room and touched me in the side of the head, and I was delivered from drinking, swearing, and became a Christian, and tried my best ever since, but I've had some tough times that I fell short.
What other memories that are favorite good memories of Washington?
I love fishing. Did a lot of fishing, and it's amazing how much you learn in fishing. The Bible talks a lot about fishing, but I could go fishing, and I would pray, and the Lord would tell me where to go, and I would catch my limit. So much so that the people in the church always wanted to go fishing with me, and it was a big church. It was the biggest church in Pentecostal church in Seattle, and it's beside the freeway with that cross on it, still there.
Oh, the Calvary.
Calvary Temple.
Okay, yeah.
And it was a German pastor, a real nice guy, Horst. But we always went fishing, and then I changed churches when I moved to Everett. And then the preacher said, I want to go fishing with you, because, well, he was poor. It was a small church. And so we went out to CQ, and we fished all day from 5 o'clock in the morning till 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And we had nothing. So I walked into the woods and I prayed, and the Lord said, go back and fish and go straight out. And you fish for salmon always along the banks and the seaweed or the kelp. So we went back out, and in 1 hour we caught a limit, 15 fish. There was 5 of us fishing, him and his 3 boys and me and him. And he was so excited. He couldn't believe it. Later, he got the crew together to kick me out of the church, because your mom had died, and then I got married to Karen, and she was so much younger. And he was so ticked off, it just doesn't happen. And the Lord showed me clearly that this was who I was to marry. She was a preacher's daughter. He showed me 7 points in her life. She was financially secure. She was going to have a lot of children. She was going to be good financially, taking care of the family and financially. I don't remember the rest of them, but I had them all written down on a sheet of paper. And I was going to Bible school, and so was she. And then we got married by a Baptist minister. I went out he was in Snohomish. I went out to see an uncle of mine, and then he wasn't there. So the guy came over and said, who are you looking for? And I said, my uncle. Oh, well, Chris. And then he said, he's a pastor. He said, you guys must be a couple in love. Because he said, yes, we're thinking of getting married. I said, I'll marry you. So we got together and got married in Marysville, and went back home. Your mom had a vision. When we lived in, I bought a motel, and then we moved. I gave the motel to the Philadelphia church for a missionary housing when they come home from leave. And then we prayed of where to go, and the first address we got was every side we went on, it would be like in the middle of Weiser Lake. It was the middle of Echo Lake. And we went home and we prayed again. And we said, why would that be in the middle of the lake? I said, let's pray again. I said, we'll get the number. And then we got the right address, and then that was 17902 59th Place West. Brand new house. Beautiful house. 3 fireplaces, 2 stories. And I had a gas station, and we were...
Was that like, it was like a split level house in Linwood?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were on just north of Linwood, about a mile or a mile and a half, something like that.
Didn't you live before in a smaller house before that?
Oh yeah, we did. We moved from the motel to 20907 59th Place West, and then we went. Then that's where we prayed, and then we got that big new house, and always. The more children I had, okay.
Go ahead.
So I shot this pheasant, and he went down, but they could run like crazy, see? So I chased them, and I stumbled in a furrow, and the gun went down in the dirt, and I tore a ligament, and then I had to have the operation anyhow. But I was out in the Army. The Army paid for it, which, of course, still bothers me to this day. This is the scar.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's almost gone. And this caused bad circulation. That's what I got that, see.
Yeah. So let me ask you here. We'll go with something else. So how old were you when you first got married? And who did you marry?
21 and a half. And your mom was 20... Let's see. Yeah, she was... But she was born 33. We got married in August, and she was 21 in November. We were both about 21. We were the same age, same class, same school. We were boy and girlfriend all the time. I lived in Cullman, went to college. She went to college then at the same one, and then I went to the service, and when I came back, see, that was like about 4 years or so. I think we were together about 7 years before. And I had 3 brother-in-laws, all named Herman, married to 3 sisters of hers. Yeah. That was kind of unusual, you know.
Yeah. What was the names of the brother-in-laws?
Well, one was Herman J. Herman. Because when they say, what's your first name? Herman. What's your last name? Herman. Well, what's your name? Well, so he said Herman J. Herman. And the other one was Gottlieb Herman. In German, that means God loves Herman. And the other one was Helmut Herman. It was, your mother was the second youngest. There was one younger, Irma, than your mother, and then...
No, my mother was the youngest.
Huh?
My mother was the youngest.
No, she was second youngest.
Luella?
Yeah.
No.
Irma was younger. Oh, no?
No, Luella was the youngest, and then...
Oh, Irma was the youngest, I guess, outside of Luella.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm not sure, no, I could...
Yeah.
There was Rose, Alma, Edna, Esther, Luella, and Irma. I think Irma was younger.
Luella was younger by a lot. They're a lot older than...
Oh. Well, then Luella, so there were 6 girls and 2 boys, Emil and Reuben. Janky. Played a lot of checkers. They loved checkers. They'd sit in the restaurant in the back of the cafe and set up tables there, and all the guys in the wintertime sat there playing checkers.
What are your 10 most favorite memories in Washington?
In Washington? When I got saved on August 4th, 1960. That's number one. I had a real great experience with God. Jesus came into my room and touched me in the side of the head, and I was delivered from drinking, swearing, and became a Christian, and tried my best ever since, but I've had some tough times that I fell short.
What other memories that are favorite good memories of Washington?
I love fishing. Did a lot of fishing, and it's amazing how much you learn in fishing. The Bible talks a lot about fishing, but I could go fishing, and I would pray, and the Lord would tell me where to go, and I would catch my limit. So much so that the people in the church always wanted to go fishing with me, and it was a big church. It was the biggest church in Pentecostal church in Seattle, and it's beside the freeway with that cross on it, still there.
Oh, the Calvary.
Calvary Temple.
Okay, yeah.
And it was a German pastor, a real nice guy, Horst. But we always went fishing, and then I changed churches when I moved to Everett. And then the preacher said, "I want to go fishing with you," because, well, he was poor. It was a small church. And so we went out to CQ, and we fished all day from 5 o'clock in the morning till 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And we had nothing. So I walked into the woods and I prayed, and the Lord said, "Go back and fish and go straight out. And you fish for salmon always along the banks and the seaweed or the kelp." So we went back out, and in 1 hour we caught a limit, 15 fish. There was 5 of us fishing, him and his 3 boys and me and him. And he was so excited. He couldn't believe it. Later, he got the crew together to kick me out of the church because your mom had died, and then I got married to Karen, and she was so much younger. And he was so ticked off, like it just doesn't happen. And the Lord showed me clearly that this was who I was to marry. She was a preacher's daughter. He showed me 7 points in her life. She was financially secure. She was going to have a lot of children. She was going to be good financially, taking care of the family and financially. I don't remember the rest of them, but I had them all written down on a sheet of paper. And I was going to Bible school, and so was she. And then we got married by a Baptist minister. I went out he was in Snohomish. I went out to see an uncle of mine, and then he wasn't there. So the guy came over and said, "Who are you looking for?" And I said, "My uncle." "Oh, well, Chris." And then he said, "He's a pastor." He said, "You guys must be a couple in love." Because he said, "Yes, we're thinking of getting married." I said, "I'll marry you." So we got together and got married in Marysville, and went back home. Your mom had a vision. When we lived in, I bought a motel, and then we moved. I gave the motel to the Philadelphia church for a missionary housing when they come home from leave. And then we prayed of where to go, and the first address we got was every side we went on, it would be like in the middle of Weiser Lake. It was the middle of Echo Lake. And we went home and we prayed again. And we said, "Why would that be in the middle of the lake?" I said, "Let's pray again." I said, "We'll get the number." And then we got the right address, and then that was 17902 59th Place West. Brand new house, beautiful house, 3 fireplaces, 2 stories, and I had a gas station, and we were things were
Was
really
that
good.
like it was like a split level house in Linwood?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were on just north of Linwood, about a mile or a mile and a half, something like that.
Didn't you live before in a smaller house before that?
Oh yeah, we did. We moved from the motel to 20907 59th Place West, and then we went. Then that's where we prayed, and then we got that big new house, and always the more children I had, and the more money I needed, I always got a better job and made more money. That was absolutely so clear in my life. I can never forget that. God is really good, because I tell you, I should have had about 10 more kids, and I probably would be a multimillionaire. I've 11 already.
What other memories? Or that's like two. You kind of threw a lot of things in there, but any other memory that stands out from Washington when you lived here?
Well, my association with Ken Cook, we I don't know how we ever became friends. He was the largest truck dealer, in the world. One day he sold 285 trucks to Twin Valley Foods. They were those dump trucks, for hauling peas and corn and vegetables. Mm-hmm. And when Karen and I got married, then we stopped there, and Karen had a wart right in the end of her nose. And he said, "My goodness," he said, "that's terrible." He said, "A pretty girl like you and a wart on the end of the nose." He said, "Let's pray God heals her." So he said, "We'll lay hands on her." And he's going like this, and I'm thinking, hey, that's my girlfriend or wife. Was a wife by then. And he prayed. But by the time we left Mount Vernon to Marysville, she started screaming. I said, "What's up? What's up?" She said, "Give me the mirror. Give me the mirror." And she turned the mirror. She said, "It's gone." I said, "What's gone?" She says, "My wart." And I looked, and it was gone. It was gone to this day. Just disappeared in that 10-minute drive. And now I've got him. But I say it's my lucky one. Touch it and you might get it too, see. And let's see. Then I got, that was a miracle. I met, Ken Cook's, see, he was in the in the truck business. He was strictly trucks. But he helped me. He sold, I think I bought 185 trucks one day, because they were all junk, and I chunked them out, and man, we made a lot of money on them. And then I went chunking cars. I had a picker, we call them, and you smash all the windows out, take all the wiring off and burn it so you could sell the copper, and then you had the radiator and the heater. You chop them out, chop the seats out and all the glass, and then you haul them to Seattle. We'd haul 6 down at a time, and that was big money, just chunking. I've always been a kind of a chunk guy, and we had several guys work for me. But we were busy. And then I expanded. We started buying the old cars that people abandoned. They passed a law that you couldn't if you left your cars without buying the license, you had to put it on blocks. And then a lot of people didn't know how to get rid of the cars, so they'd sell them at $25. We paid for a car. And then we'd smash them up. And some of them, where you could have fixed up and driven, but you'd have to do the title work. I know one time we had one, so we drove it home. Well, not quite home, but it's kind of like at the corner. And then at night, somebody came and stole the transmission out of it. We laughed. I mean, that's a pretty good mechanic in the dark, steal a transmission out of a car.
Yeah. What is your biggest achievement, or what's given you the most joy in life?
Knowing the Lord has been the most exciting by far, because it's a life changer. It's you get the wisdom you need. You fail a lot because you get yourself in the way. But in all honesty, I have to say that's by far the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I did a lot of preaching in Skid Row missions when after I had gone to the 2 Bible schools. And then we went over, we were going to buy Gonzaga University in Spokane. Ken had a lot of money, see. And then, well, we were preaching and talking about the Lord on the bus. We took a bus over. And then the driver got mad. And he said, I don't want to preach in here. And he shut us up. And then somehow that thing fizzled out. And then, of course, it opened up where I formed that Lermont Corporation with Ken Cook. And that was a fantastic situation. That was one of the biggest opportunities I ever had. But we didn't get it finished, and I don't know why. We bought that old Lermont. It was up on the Fieldstone Road, and we were going to put a Bible school there. Well, it was owned by 2 guys, a guy named Grundy and a guy named, I forget his name now. He was a friend of that boxer, the wrestler. He's the guy that sold the land to Atlantic Richfield.
Joel Douglas?
No. Joel came in later. What happened then was they got in a fight. So that's why they wanted to sell it. So we agreed to buy it. So we went to one guy and, yep, he'll sell it to us. I don't remember, $35,000 or whatever the money was. Then went to the other guy and he said he'll sell it to us. So then we went and signed the one guy up. And then the other guy said, oh, well, I'm not going to sign it. Because it's just bought from him. He said, because they both claimed ownership. And we had a deal with both of them, but then that fizzled out. So then we never did get it. And then Joel Douglas went and made a double deal on it and bought it. And that's the Bellingham Mall.
No, not the Bellingham Mall. It's Lermont Manor.
No, but he bought that and then he sold it and got the money and bought all that land from Wilder.
No, that's a different guy.
No, that was Joel Douglas. Rita was born in Everett, I guess.
No, she would have been born in not Everett. We would still be living in Seattle or Linwood.
Well, one was born when we lived on the South Lake Stevens Road. One was born in Everett.
Nancy.
Oh. It's when I was wrecking cars. I don't. Yeah, I must have been with Karen by then. I know I had a special pickup built with a dump truck because I hauled wood. I did that for quite a while too.
So when did you have the gas station when you lived in Linwood?
Well, it was L&L, Lloyd and Luella. See, it was the Texaco station. And then we had the Happy Time. There was a Time Oil Company in Snohomish. And he had the trucking route for hauling the sawdust and the garden supplies. I was in that truck hauling business through Ken Cook. because I bought an old Studebaker from him. I think $1,500 or something. And one time I remember we were driving with the load and the front wheel fell off. And then one time, then I hired a couple of guys, and the one guy, he went across the railroad track, and it was a big truck, and they had made some that shifted on the steering column, and you know the reverse and neutral are opposites, or first and reverse, and accidentally he stuck it in reverse, and we tore that up. So we fixed the gearbox in the middle of the night, the rain running down our necks. I mean, it was just an accident. He didn't have a crash. He just had a breakdown, you know. But he made a wrong shift, you know. If you those old cars, you had to be careful because see, they had an H. You're going up, 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 and up. See, you had reverse, first, second, third.
When you lived in Linwood at the house, the new house that you bought, where were you going to church?
There we went with Arneson on the Alderwood Road, 164th, and on that side of the freeway. A little tiny church like this Spanish church here. It's and then I was the youth pastor, see, and I was an interesting situation. I would preach at 6 to the young people, and the pastor at 7 on Sunday nights. And we had Wednesday nights services, Wednesday or Thursday night. And then he got jealous. Same guy that I took fishing, and we caught all those fish. And then he said, you went overtime. You went past 7:05. I said, no. I said, I set my time. I said, I called time. Those days you called time, and you got the time. And so I stood on that. And he said, I checked it too. He said, no. He said, you. And I said, well, look. I said, our watches were different. But we didn't argue. Then he called a meeting, and he had me disbarred from membership. I lost my job as a preacher. And then I prayed about it. Oh, I cried. I felt so bad because I thought I was kicked out of heaven, you know. And then the Lord showed me that his deacon had an affair with his own daughter, and that the pastor lied. It's not easy to think, Charlie. But today, I forgive him. I suppose I'll see him in heaven. I mean, I don't. You know, it was just something testing me. My faith's been tested.
So how long did you live at the house in Linwood?
Oh, it was several years, probably 2 or 3 years. I don't recall exactly. It was a house I owned. See, I bought a bunch of houses. I had 17 houses and 1 fourplex in Bellard. So I sometimes say I had 20 houses or 21 units or whatever. And it was one of them. And when I sold or gave away the motel, that's when we moved out there. But I can't remember the dates.
That was before the house in Linwood, though.
Huh?
That was before the house in Linwood.
Well, we had the house on 15th Northeast. That's the one that became the fraternity. And then we had the motel, and when I got rid of that, then I moved into one of the houses that I had in Linwood, which was just about a new house, but Lloyd was still alive. I just remember now.
Because he'd have been dead.
Huh?
Yeah, I was about 3 or so when we lived in
Well, then it was you,
Yeah.
but went out painting with me.
Okay.
Because we were, we got high on the fumes from the paint, and then we wrestled, and we had a lot of fun. I mean, we were laughing like crazy, you know, which is probably the closest I've ever got to any drugs or any high. But I remember that so well. We wrestled on the carpet. It was a new house, well, it was kind of new, but we redid it or refurbished it when we moved into the 17902 59th Place West. And that was 20907. Well, that was 59th. The other one was 79th. Yeah, Street.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was you. I thought it was Lloyd.
Now, did you ever take any trips to see like the Rose Bowl or anything?
Yeah, we went down to the Rose Bowl. Your mother and I always wanted to see the Rose Bowl. And so one year, I was making nice money then. So we went down, just her and I. And I think, again, we left the children with, I suppose, Aunt Ida. And then the game was at 2 o'clock, and it was over by, I suppose, about 5. And you know how light it is here yet at that hour. So we drove a ways, and then your mom got sick. Oh, she got so sick, and then I'm sure she died. And I didn't know what to do, so I pulled over the side of the road and I prayed. And it's nasty to say, but then she come to. She was totally lifeless, and man, I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do. We were on the road, no place, didn't know any place, didn't even know where we were. So I prayed, and she come to. And she said, I got to go to the bathroom. When she went to the bathroom right beside the car, and a big black turd came out. And then I said, we're not driving anymore. And then first motel we came to was the old motel, $6 and $8 motels they paid for a night. We rented a room, and I think to this day the train comes through the middle of the bedroom. Several trains went by. We were right beside the railroad track because woo, and click, 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 click. What's that? Well, we had quite an experience already. And then she lived another 7 years. So I was in the Rose Bowl, I think, in 60. Yeah. It was 1960, and she passed away in 1967. Yeah. I remember that well. But that time I said, she'll come back again. And they worked and worked on her. Only I got up, and you came out, and you said, why is Mommy on the floor? In 67, how old were you?
Yeah, it was 67.
Oh, see, and I said, what do you mean? He said, well, she's laying in the bathroom on the floor. I said, what? And I got up. I was reading the newspaper. You got the newspapers in those days. And I got up, and I picked her up, and I laid her on the bed, and that's all I heard. And they said that's very common, that the last breath goes out of them and they're gone. But we called 911, or well, it was 911. We called the emergency, and the ambulance came out, and then they worked and worked on her, you know, the CPR, and tried everything. And I cried and prayed, and that was so hard because she came to once before, and now she didn't. So then my mother came out and helped me from October till December. And then I got a housemaid, and then I went back to Bible school, and then that's where I met Karen. And boy, the Lord gave me the full history on Karen. That was more than I could take, because I never thought that would ever could possibly be separated, because God put it together. I had 7 points, Charlie, that God told me about her. And I knew her just like the prophets knew things that they saw in distance. See, I've had several experiences with God where you see something and you don't fully understand it. Even John had that in the book of Revelation. And here's the reason why. See, eternity is like this. It's a big unbroken circle. God sits right there in the middle. He can look at any spot he wants, and it's right now. See, he sees every corner, every nick and cranny, and every spot. And that's the only time God has, is now. He doesn't have tomorrow, he doesn't know yesterday.
Yeah.
He's
Okay, so what then? So after Luella died, then where did you move to?
That's when we moved to 67. I think I first came to from 67 till 70 or 71. I moved up here to
You moved to Lake Stevens first, didn't you?
must have been.
Yeah.
And then that's where I studied the Bible. That's all I did. I didn't work. And see, I knew Ken Cook by then, because he sold me those trucks just to get rid of his garbage in the backyard. And then we lived on the South Lake Stevens Road, and see, the lake was just down the road. And then we, no, that was what Karen.
Yeah, that was Karen.
Yeah, because she painted, she got the idea to paint butterflies and little designs on the tubes, and we sold them. We should have rented them. You know, it was, I see now, I saw the other day, somebody was renting tubes for going down rivers and stuff, and I sold those tubes. Well, we took them out of the truck tires for free, and we got, I don't know, $5, $10, whatever, and that was a lot of money. Some guys even bought them for their truck because it was cheap. But because we had all sizes, we cut up trucks that were like the big Kenworths, and we cut up some that were, well, like furniture store trucks, you know. We used the torches. Boy, I tell you, I got, wow, I don't see it no more now. Well, it's got a spot on it too. It's got a lucky wart on it, see.
So after Lake Stevens, where did you go?
Lake Stevens, that's when we came to Bellingham. Or, let's see. Where did we move to?
Bellingham.
Yeah. And then we lived there in the Aldrich Road. So that was, I think, 71. Do you remember when we moved up here?
I started 6th grade, so it would have been 1970. That would have been
70, 71?
72.
Oh, 72. It, yeah, that's, and then they all went to Ferndale.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met George Reeling, and then, well, I had the Wise Lake Trading Post then, from about 70, I think I bought it in 71. Well, no, George and I were partners, but he, 30 days later, went to the sheriff's department, worked there because it was a steady job, because they had cheated him out of it, see. And then, see, I had a big scab here, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
Charlie, I had a dream about 2 weeks ago, and this thing didn't go away. It didn't go away, and I felt it, and it feels just exactly like this now that I had the dream.
Yeah.
And now it's gone.
It's okay. Well, I think we're gonna close for tonight. It's getting later. We'll come back and finish here.
What time is it? Oh, it's only 10.
All right. So after you got out of the Army, then what did you do for work?
Well, I went to school. Oh, the first job I got then was selling insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And for 5 years, I was the #1 salesman. There was over 2,500 salesmen. And every single year, I was the #1 salesman in the Farmers Union Insurance Corporation out of Denver. They formed an insurance company for farmers. And then they built a great big office building in Denver, Colorado. And that office building, they sold on debentures. You know what a debenture is?
I don't know.
Well, it's a note and then you get a return on it. It's almost like mutual funds, but I, I remember so well that I sold debentures to build that building. And we went to we had one guy that had club feet in Cullum. He worked for his uncle at $90 a month in the summertime for 6 months, farming, running a farm, and he was handicapped, okay. So the uncle was a millionaire. So he questioned me, and then he bought a bunch of money. I mean, I don't remember the amounts, maybe 10, 20, 50,000, which was a lot of money in those days. So he said, go see Marcus shoot, and said he'll buy some too. And I thought, wow, Marcus shoot. I mean, he's crippled, and he was like Javier, So I thought, man, he's got money, but I went to see him. And he said, well, my uncle said to buy it. We sat with a kerosene light on the table, and he goes in the bedroom, and he comes out, and he's got a roll of money like this, all wrapped together with rubber bands. And I think he bought 1,000, which was a lot of money. Well, I mean, can you imagine accumulating money to invest when you make $90 a month, 6 months of the year? Well, he lived at home with his parents. Levi Shute was his name, I guess. And he bought some, and that was then I got the job insurance agent for 5 years, probably a little longer, and then we built that office building down there. And then that now is part of the state capitol, that building. I helped sell parts of the building for I don't know what they use it for, one of the Moors would know. But then I had the opportunity, that's when I went west, either go to Seattle, where my uncle was, or go to Denver, where my company was. But I didn't want to go work in an office, so I came to Seattle, and then my uncle, I don't know, he helped me, and I got into real estate. And then
Why did you decide to move to Seattle? What was it?
I had 2 uncles here, see. I didn't know anybody in Denver, but there was my uncle Schlecht, and David Schlecht, and do you know him or no?
See, he's in Bellingham.
Yeah, he one time had a whole bunch of houses.
Yeah, he had a few houses here.
You remember he used to have that real estate office on the corner of the point of Lakeview and from downtown. It was
okay.
I don't know. I never got much together with him. And then I had him and Robert Jenke. Robert was married to my mom's sister, Hertha and Edna. They were sisters, and Fred married Edna, and Robert married. And then he was a drinker. He always had beer. He was kind of like Carlos, Hertha would say, okay, Robert, you had enough to drink now. And then she'd grab it and she'd drink it. We used to laugh at that. And he worked hard. He was working for Sternoff Steel. And he could, when he was in his 60s, he would pick 200 pounds of steel up and load it on a truck and take it in to sell for money, But he could, I think it was over 220 pounds he could lift up on the bed of a truck. That's at that age. Yeah. He had good health.
So when you came to Seattle, then you were in the real estate business, you say?
Well, I got into real estate. Exactly how? Oh, I know. They had a real estate school. And I read it in the Times. and they'll train you. And I took that training, and Johnny Holmes was the realtor and had 3 offices, I think. He had University, Lakeway, and Greenwood, or 2 or 3 offices. And he was a teacher for the whole North End Brokers Association. So he trained hundreds of real estate guys. And he was a nice guy, a little short guy. And then I got into that, and then I did real well there. I sold houses. I then went into the investment department, and I was there several years. And then I guess I met King there. Then him and I went and opened our own office on Yesler Way, down by all the Negroes lived. We had 100%. Then I went to the black churches, and that was quite an experience, because they have services. They would roll on the ground. They would put on their robes and sing. And to this day, I can't forget this. When they would sing, nowadays they clap, but they would go like this. They almost made squares. To this day, no idea what that was for, but I'll tell you, it was a show. And then we built them a church. We got a lot, and I think we went into those with Western Housing, where we could build a house in 24 hours. They're prefabs. We would call Portland and tell them what this number, and they ship it on a truck. But we had to have the foundation ready, and they'd set up these whole side walls, and then the electrician and the plumber, everybody came in and hooked it all up, and we made headlines. They had it on the front page of the Seattle Times. I mean, this house was built in 24 hours. That was, and then we.
Where were you living during this time?
Oh, the beautiful house I bought on 16th Northeast. It's one of the Greek houses now for the University of Washington. Had nine bedrooms, 9 or 14, maybe 9 in the basement. But anyhow, it was a Dutch colonial house, a beautiful house. And from there, then I went and bought the motel, because that was the Globetrotter. And then I gave that away and went to Everett. And then I went into wrecking, and it was good money.
Now, you lost a son.
Well, that's when I became a Christian, see, on August 4th, 1960. When Jolene, no, I think it was you were born.
Yeah, I was born in 1960.
And what?
I was born in 1960.
Okay. So when you were born, we came home, and I had bought her a box of candy, and he woke up and he wanted breakfast, so he went and got the Cheerios. And there he saw those candy, and so he took the candy and ate them, and a peanut went in his lung. So all day he was coughing. And then your mom called and said, I want to take him to a doctor. And I said, okay. I said, what are we going to do with the kids? And she said, well, I'll take them over to Ida, because my aunt, my mother's sister, was living close. So we took the babies over there. It was Jolene and you. And then they went to Children's Orthopedic Hospital. Well, when I went in there, then the doctor came out, and Charlie, he was this far away, and you could smell his alcohol like crazy. You could see I hadn't drank now for years, from 1960 till 1967, so I could smell that alcohol a long ways off. And he said, well, he said, ordinary, that's an easy operation. He said, we go down and just suck it out with a pipe. And he said they might get a little infection in the lungs for a bit, and it's fine. But he said his heart stopped. And that was when they first started opening chests for massaging the heart and getting back to life. So they did. And then he lived, I think, 2 or 3 days. The Full Gospel Businessmen had a meeting every Saturday morning. And I went over there Saturday morning, but then that Sunday morning he died. And then that was a real highlight, because then your mom was so sad. Oh, she was, I mean, like Betty, she was just out of it. She just, it was so pitiful. And then we went to that big church there where Hearst, you know, I told you, with the cross on it. And then she went down praying, and I was sitting in the front row and I was watching her pray. In those days, Charles, the churches all had prayer meeting after the services. They all went down in front and knelt down and prayed. And she went down and prayed, and Sister Zumwalt, she came over and she put her arm around her, and your mom was crying and jumping and happy and laughing. And I thought, what's going on? I sat in the front row watching, you know, like about the chair here. And then she got up and she says, I saw him. I said, who? She said, Lloyd Jr. I said, what? She said, I was praying. She says, and Jesus walked up. And then he turned around, and she said, I was screaming or hollering or crying. I said, don't go, don't go. And then he turned around and he picked up Lloyd and he brought him, you know, that picture of the lambs. And he was carrying him, she said, and he had such a beautiful smile on his face. And she was so happy ever that she knew he was in heaven. It was quite an experience. So that's one thing for sure. You got a brother up there. And then her sadness left, and of course then after you was Rita, then Tiny.
So Rita, when was Rita born?
Rita was born in Everett, I guess.
No, she would have been born in not Everett. We would still be living in Seattle or Linwood.
Well, one was born when we lived on the South Lake Stevens Road. One was born
That
in
was
Everett.
Nancy.
Oh. So when I was wrecking cars, I don't know. Yeah, I must have been with Karen by then. I know I had a special pickup built with a dump truck.
Mm-hmm. Okay, question here. What's some of the memories with your brothers, good or bad, that you had when you were growing up?
I'd say they were all good.
Like specifically, what memory or something you can always remember?
We fought, got in arguments. One time, I think it was over a girl or something. My oldest brother and me, we had a big fight, and I would have killed him if I could have, but he was stronger, and finally Lawrence got between us and said, stop it, and he stopped it. But that was, we were working on the fence in the field, and like I said, got in an argument, but I wasn't strong enough. He was stronger, he was older, see. But no, as a whole, our family was very close-knit.
What was a good memory you had between your brothers, something you guys did?
Oh, boy. Hunt and fish. Did lots of that. Because that was the wild old North Dakota. Nothing particularly that outstanding that I could recall.
I remember one time there was a story you told me something about when Irvin was always bigger, he would push you guys into the cow pies or something.
Well, that's horseplay. We would do that. I don't remember it specifically, but that was common with everybody, you know, push them and try to, you know, cow pies are about this big. I remember we, if it was a hot summer and they would dry up and then we would pick them You pick them by hand, they're dry. It's just dry grass. And then you burn them in the wintertime as fuel,
Mm-hmm.
or at least to start fuel. It was like these Presto logs.
Yeah.
But it was just grass processed.
What about your grandfather? What can you do you remember about your grandparents?
My grandma was very fat, very fat. She sat in a chair like this, and her stomach was here, actually hanging down. Had gray hair, had way double chin, which Irvin, my oldest brother, had in his later years too. And my grandfather, of course, she divorced him when he had, well, he retired, and then he lived in Fredonia, and he had, I suppose, an adjustment for retirement. So he hitched up a team of horses and run them down Main Street and turned around and run back. And she was a proud woman, my grandma, you know. She had, Elsie was the second oldest daughter. And
whose parents were these?
Huh?
Whose parents were these? Was these?
These were my grandparents.
Of whose though? Of your
My
dad
mother,
or your mom?
my
Your
mom.
mom. Okay.
No, my dad has no history. He had a mother, but she passed away before I could ever see her or remember anything. And he although had one cousin, which we made an uncle, and that's what we called him. And his kids were our cousins, but he was a cousin to my dad. And then my grandpa, when he run those horses through, she was so embarrassed, she had him declared insane, and they put him in the insane asylum in Jamestown. And he kept escaping, and he'd walk home from Jamestown to Fredonia, 50 miles. And he did that several times, so finally Dad said, that's enough. He said, if he's smart enough to get out of the confinement, there's nothing wrong with him. So Dad signed over, and he lived with us for a minute until he passed away. And I'll tell you, that's one huge, big reason that I'm a Christian, because I'll tell you, all he did, Dad wouldn't let him work because he was a busy man. He was a little guy. And he wanted to work, so Dad, because he'd want to milk the cows and work like a farm, see. Dad said, no, you're too old, and I didn't take you out for a slave. So he would let him get the eggs, I think feed the chickens, just a couple of little chores, and he did that. And the rest of the time, he sat reading the Bible, many hours a day, and praying. And then he'd go in his bedroom and pray. He had a bedroom alone, and he would pray in, I suppose, tongues, because we couldn't understand. We thought it was praying in Russian or what. And that's all he did, was read the Bible and pray for many years. And then the other sisters and brother that they had, Edna, Alma, Esther, Irma, and Ben. So they had 5 children. And then and Edna, 6, I was 6. So when Dad signed them out, then the others felt so cheap. So then they traded them 6 months here, 6 months, 6 months, 6 months. But then Robert moved out west. Elsie, no, not Elsie. What's the one that lived in
Ida.
Ida, yeah. Ida, they moved out west, so then it was only Ben, Richard, and us that he would straight every 6 months. And then when he was, I think, 79, then he passed away. But he prayed. He prayed and prayed and read the Bible. He sat at one little corner on a chair and had the Bible, and he'd read. He lost his hearing. He was...
What did he read in English, German? What did he read?
Oh, he read German. Everything was German, Charlie. they were so German that they Dad was chairman of the township, which would be like the supervisor of the road blading and buying school books and the county duties, say, like a alderman or whatever you call it. And then a guy came out and he said he wanted a check signed. He had to sign the checks for the township, which was a designated area like our district and representatives there now. And he came to him to sign a check, and he said, well, he said, you can go to, he said, you can have Willie Kusler sign too. And he said, no, he said, he can't sign it. He says, because you're the chairman. Well, I said, he's German too. And then one time we lived on a road, and a guy came by and he said, I want to get so and so and so. I'll just say Ted Netson. He said, well, he said, you drive straight ahead till you get to the Kornstich. Und dann geht's links und noch fast runter und das andere Eck noch fast. The guy said, what? And he said, oh, he said, he don't speak English. Oh, well, he says, you go to the corner where the cornfield is, then you go left to the other corner and you go right, and then there's where Ted Netz lives. So they had a lot of fun, with the wrong words. They throw in the German words.
I remember you telling me a story once about your grandfather when you were slaughtering a pig or something.
Yeah, he lived in Ukraine, I think it was, and everybody butchered in those days. They butchered a calf and a pig, and then they made sausage, mixing those two together, 3/4 beef and 1/4 pork, and they would. Oh, that was ugly, You take a pig and you catch it, and then you take a really sharp knife. Did I show you the knife I found?
Yeah.
Oh, and then you'd stab them in the throat, and then they'd bleed and fall down, and oh, it was bloody. And then you drag them into the barn, and you would put a block and tackle on them and pull them up, and then you would skin them, see? And so they drug it up there, they tied it up, and they brought it up, and he said, up she goes. And Grandpa couldn't talk any English at all, see? So all of us said, he's talking Russian. He said, up she goes. And they laughed. They said, well, they pulled the pig up, see? He said, up she goes. So he had a little, that was a big joke. Grandpa could talk Russian. Up she goes. It was English. They had a lot of jokes like that.
What can you tell us about your grandpa, your Fred Vogel? I mean, your father's Fred Vogel, his growing up, or anything about his childhood?
Well, he came over with his mother, and his father, I believe, was a Jew. But see, he never came over, and maybe she was a single mom. I'm not sure. Her name was Magdalena Schlecht, and that would indicate she was not married, but he was a Vogel. So, see, and that's Bird, and I think that's Jewish, see. Well, they had a lot of Jews in Germany. That's why Hitler, killed so many. And then he came over with her, and I think 2 brothers. I know there was Reinhold, which was a cousin of his, and then there was Jacob from Enderlin, and had a bunch of kids. He must have had 10, 11. Reinhold had only 3, Calvin, Elroy, and Velda. Had 2 boys and a girl. They lived fairly close for a long time when we lived there at Edgeley, probably a couple of miles or so. And then he had no relatives at all. I mean, that was about the extent of it. And then he started working for other people very early. He never went. I think he got went to school till he had sixth grade. And then he had to start working, so he would have been 12 years old. And I know one time he was telling us that there was a lot of work yet with the horses before tractors came out. And he was disking the beds, making the ground level, dragging it nice and level like when they put a lawn in. And it started raining and sleeting. So the horses turned around and faced the back opposite way. So when they turn around, they turn the harrow upside down. And the guy that had him working for him, the slave master, beat that daylights out of him because those horses obeyed the weather and, well, I think tangled up the harnesses and maybe did some damage to the harrow or the rake, whatever you call it. Very early, I raked with the old dump rakes, rake, and then you kick the button, and then it would trip. If you couldn't push the button, you'd push a lever. And you'd make windrows. Then you pile it up on the stack. So one or two guys were on the stack. One guy would rake, and the other guy would take the not forklift, but the lift, and push it all together, and then bring it over and put it on the stack.
So the haystack.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the deers would eat half of it. Yeah, they were good old days. You learn a lot. I tell you, you learn much, so much more that you can't hardly believe. The poor people that just grow up in these big cities, they just know nothing. It's no wonder it's a mess like it is. Oh my, how they just, well, nowadays they don't know if they're a boy or a girl. I mean, if they're...
We're gonna stop it here now.
They don't know.
Okay, we're recording here again. So, let's see here. What's the best memory? I'm gonna ask you what the best memories are that you have for each child. You don't have to do them in any particular order.
Oh, for each child?
Yes. Like, so what memory do you have? Let's say the best memory or something.
Well, I think
memory
I'll
of
just take
Jolene.
them in order because
Okay.
Well, boy, with Jolene, I don't know. Let's see, let's go to you.
Something that you had that maybe that was funny. Something that was...
I should get a copy of those questions.
Well, I don't have those questions written down.
Then I could
well, I can say, okay, well, I'll start with someone else then.
With you, well, all the kindness you do taking care of me, because I tell you, you have no idea how I appreciate it and how much it means to me. Because if it wasn't for the help you give us, boy, I'll tell you, I'd be in pretty bad shape to depend on the others.
Well, we'll start with a different question here now.
And then, yeah, let's go.
Okay.
I'll think about that. You can leave me that slip and I'll get it later.
Okay.
I'll make notes.
What were the 5 most, I think I asked you that already, 5 most difficult times of your life, and you gave me some.
Well,
I remember you talked about Luella, and I think Lloyd passing away.
of course, those were the
Top 2.
Lloyd dying, and then Luella, and then Karen abandoning the family the way she did with actually planning it over a long period of time. And then losing everything I worked for about 50 years with that Charlie Bates. It wasn't just the money, it was the fact that it was allowed to make me a better person. And money is not that big an issue for me today. I never really thought I was that stuck on money. I tried to be a good businessman and was, I thought, but between Charlie Bates, I had $500,000 Charlie in the 60s, no 70s, in the bank, and this was in the Royal Canadian Bank, but American money, plus I at one time had $100,000 for each one of the children. Somebody talking?
I think Betty has the television on really loud.
The what?
Betty has the TV on pretty loud. Betty has the TV on loud.
Ain't there?
Yeah.
But and then I thought I would recover it because I bought silver. And that guy, he was from Miami, never met him, and he led me into buying on the margin. And then I couldn't meet all the margin calls and lost that. And then the Lord spoke to me and said, don't worry about it. I could give it back to you in winning a lottery ticket. And so I've always kind of thought maybe someday I'll win a lottery. But I believe it, but it's not a priority issue that affects me spiritually. If I win it, I enter contests occasionally, or whenever I see a good one or a big one, and they say, what would you do with the money? And I always say, give it away. So if I got everything I need, why would I need to win a big lottery ticket? And then the Allied aggregates, I made a lot of money, when we went on that trip around the U.S. And then they cheated and lied, and that was a crooked lawyer. They took that back. They actually sat in court and said, well, we got together. No, I don't know if they said in court or just to me. They said, we got together last night, 3 sons and the father, and drank beer and got all our stories straight, and that's what we're going to testify. And of course, then I lost the pit. So, I can't say that I feel bad. I've had money. I've been poor. As refrigerators full, the freezers are full.
Yeah.
So what's...
How about we start another question in here? How did you become a Christian?
How did I become a Christian?
Yeah.
Well, Lloyd Jr., died. He swallowed a peanut. See, when Jolene was born, I got my aunt to take care of Jolene. And were you born in 60?
Yeah.
Okay, then I had the 2 small babies, and Luella took Lloyd to the hospital, to the doctor, and the doctor checked her because she said all day he was coughing. So I said, well, take him to the doctor, and then I stayed home with the kids, with you and Jolene. Then the doctor called and said, you got to get down here immediately. He said, there's an emergency. I said, what is it? He said, I won't tell you on the phone. He said, get down here. And I said, well, I got 2 small children here. He said, get somebody to take care of them. So I called my aunt, and she came over and babysat. So I went down, and I was further away from him than you, and I could smell his alcohol breath. The doctor was drunk. And he said, we try to take that peanut out. He said, we go in with a tube. And he said, and then his heart stopped. So we opened him and massaged his heart, and he's alive. I missed saying how that came about, because when you were born, then I bought Luella a box of candy and either a can or a jar of Planters peanuts. and they were put in the cupboard in the kitchen. And then he got up and we were, just getting up, and he said, "I'm hungry." And your mom said, "Well, we'll fix breakfast in a minute." So he went out and he crawled up on the cabinet and he got the peanuts and he ate peanuts, and then one slipped in his lung. And then, he just coughed, and we had breakfast. I went to work, and then she kept calling and saying, "Well, he's coughing too much. I want to get him checked." I said, "Well, go to check him," which I now already covered that part. So then I believed in healing. I've always believed in healing, and I've had many, many, many miracles in healing. That, like my leg, I tell these doctors. Yesterday this person, what was her name? She rehab girl. She said, I testified to her about how God had healed me, and she said, "Oh, that's so exciting." She says, "Thanks for sharing." And I told her several of the miracles. And then he said, "But we got his heart beating," and she says, "And he's fine." So we stayed there till a little after 9. This was probably 5 in the afternoon till 9. And then she said, "Well, you can go home and rest." He said, "Well," they put him on an ice pack. First they just laid him on ice cubes, but he melted so much ice that they couldn't keep the ice coming. So they put in an ice mattress that was as cold as ice and kept him with a low heartbeat, see. And then this was on a Friday, I guess. It was October 27th, if I remember, in 60. And then, see, so you would have been just a few months old. And then I went to the Christian businessmen's meeting that was always Saturday mornings. So I went over there and I testified that God will heal this boy. And then I went home, and then Sunday morning we went to church. But just before we went to church, then they called and they said he passed away. So then my mother had always written to me to go to this church, Fremont Tabernacle in Seattle, because there was a guy by the name of Barfoot that had preached in Cullum, and he was the pastor there now. So I called the church and said I wanted to pray with somebody because my son died. And then she says, "Oh, the pastor got transferred out of here. I think he went to California or wherever." And she said, "But I'll come." So she came out. She was a secretary. It was old Lydia Huey. And she was an old spinster maid in her 60s, which I thought, of course, was very old because I was about 35-ish, 37, somewhere in there. And she came out, and then she says, "Well," she says, "do you believe in Jesus?" I said, "Yes." And I was crying and really broken up because of losing my son. And then she said, "Well, you sound like you're ready." So she said, "Let's pray." So we lived in the basement at that time because we had 9 bedrooms. I rented all the rooms out and lived in the basement. And so I knelt on the floor and she prayed. And then she says, "Well, now you're a Christian." I said, "No." I said, "If I was a Christian," I said, "I wouldn't drink." She said, "You drink?" "Oh," she said, "that's no good at all." She took the devil by the horns and she prayed and said, "Deliver him from drinking." And Jesus walked into that room and touched me right here. I can still feel that today. Just a nice little touch like this. And my drinking was gone. So then I took all the liquor I had and put it in a box and put it behind. We had a swinging door in the kitchen.
Did this happen now when she was still there, when you felt Jesus'
Oh, yes,
presence?
yes. And then I told her, I said, "Well, the Lord touched me." And she was very happy. We became great friends, and she always came over and visited us then. And we went to the church for a while, but they didn't have a pastor. So then I worked with a guy named Walt Hines, and he went to Calvary Temple. the big church beside the freeway in Seattle with the cross on top, right beside the freeway on 8th Street, 69th and 8th. And Walt Hines was a Christian, and he always testified to me. And one day some deal went bad or something, and I was cursing and stuff, and he said, "Lloyd, you have to use language like that?" So then I thought, oh, he's a Christian, see, because my parents didn't allow any bad words. So I went to his church, and then we went there for many years. It was a good pastor, and we're there until we moved to Everett. And then we went to Arneson's church, and no, we moved to, I think we first moved to Linwood, and then to Everett. And then from Everett up to Aldridge Road. And from Aldridge Road to Mexico to here. Well, no, we went back to Seattle for a while on 916 North 46th Street.
What's your best memories that you have when you lived on the house on 5062 Aldrich Road?
Well, we had a great family. We really went to church. We're close to the Lord. That's probably the best walk I had with the Lord in my life, because Karen was a great lady, preacher's daughter, but I don't know, she went off the deep end. What got her was, see, I retired then early because then I had money, because I didn't care about money that much no more, and I had enough money. I think I had like $38,000 a year income for the next 30 years from the Weiser Lake I sold and something else. And back in the 60s, well, that was a lot of money. That would be like 5 times. It would be like $300,000-$400,000 a month now. And then I retired. We went to Mexico, and then I was only 45, and Karen was like 29. So, but we had these children, the young children. See, the older guys were all pretty well on their own, except Tiny. She went with us, but then she met Carlos, and they got married and run away, or whatever you call it, got married and stuff. And then we had to teach the kids, and she had a cook, and we were both teaching. I was doing lots of teaching. I mean, we set a certain time, and they all got good grades, and they got a good education, I think. Probably better than some of these crazy teachers they got. And then she was very upset because I didn't have to work, and she had to still work cooking. And she also had to work teaching, which I only had to do teaching. And that's really what led her astray. And then I had this friend, and he was a heavy drinker. And well, he set his bed on fire twice with smoking, and locked himself out all the time, and I'd have to go help him break into his house or get it open somehow so he could go back in. He lived just a few blocks down from the trailer park. And then he always came over, and he'd sit drink. And he would sit and drink and hold his drink, and he busted more glass, and he'd get drunk, and then he'd drop the glass, and he'd break the glass. Karen said, "Well, I like Jack because he listens to me." He said, "Yeah, he listens to you." I said, "He's drunk and he falls asleep and drops the glasses." He broke 5-10 glasses of our in the motorhome. I said, "That's not listening very good," because you know. And then they plotted it all out, because she told Shirley, Lawrence's wife, that she's going to leave me, which I didn't know at all. And then one day he paid $20 to the guy to let her on the plane, and they went to Phoenix, I think, and then they went to Albuquerque. I don't remember just how they right when that's.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Best
let's
history.
change the topic there. So,
So Aldrich Road was probably the best tenor of my stays. Also was very good on 52, 51 on north, just above the college. We had that big house, that colonial, and then we lived a good Christian life. Went to church at Ferndale. That was a good place to end the motel. It was, I bought the Globetrotter. It was kind of a miracle because I really didn't have that much money. And the lady was really kind of a fancy lady, but she had an alcoholic husband. Christensen was her name, and she says, she says, I want to sell the property. So Grace Headland was the realtor from the church, and she said, well, she says, why don't you make an offer? And I said, I don't have the money. Well, just what have you got? And I think she wanted like 300 or 350,000. I said, no, I don't have that kind of money. I said, the best I could do, I said, I could pay 120,000. And she says, oh, Lloyd, she says, you can't do that. She said, she'd be insulted. And I said, well, that's all I got. And she said, well, I'll tell her. So she went over, and the lady, I went with her. We went over, and the lady said, you give me $120,000 or we financed it. I don't remember exactly. Maybe she carried a contract. She said, I'd rather have $120,000 than lose my sanity, because his name was Luis, I guess, and she just wanted to get out of the motel. So that was a good place. And then when we left the motel, I gave it to the Philadelphia church for missionary staying. I never got a penny out of it. I just gave it to them. I got it and lived there for, I suppose, 2-3 years. And I gave it to the church, and they used it for the returning missionaries that would have a place to stay, see. Some would use 1 unit, some 2. There was 14 units, I think it was. It was right in the midst of the cemetery. Cemetery. It was on the guide, and the cemetery where Charlie was around like this and this. There was 2 motels there. Globetrotter was mine, and forget what
the seal, wasn't it? The one with the seal? The one with the seal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those 2. Oh, that must be Betty's.
Beeping something. Yeah.
Portal.
Anyhow,
She
so
froze up everything.
so you moved from the Washington, the house on that was the fraternity house in Washington, to the hotel?
No, let's see. I moved from from North Dakota to Florentia, where just on the same street where Raquel, stayed at Pacific College, in a duplex there. I rented that for quite a while, and then I guess I don't know. No, I must have bought the big house there, because see, I was in real estate then, and so I would buy the real good deals, because the manager of the real estate was a real good friend of mine, Pelly Sherman. That's how you got your name, Charles P. Sherman. So I thought that was a nice name. He was a good friend. So you got Charles P. Vogel, and he, let's see, so I don't remember if I had the motel first. No, I must have had the house on 5116 Northeast first, and then the motel. Then from the motel to Lake Stevens.
Linwood.
Oh yeah, to Linwood, and then from Linwood to Lake Stevens, and then Lake Stevens to Aldrich Road.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie?
What? So anyhow, you used to like to fish. When did you start fishing?
Well, um, it was kind of a need and necessity. The Bible had a lot about fishing. So I sold that little house to out there in Alderwood for $7,950 with 2 acres of land. And the guy financed $7,500 and he gave me $450 for an outboard motor. And then I was broke. Oh, Charlie, because I'd given the motel away. At that time, I thought that you're a better Christian if you give everything away, because, you know, there's hints of that in the Bible. They got up and left the tax receipt. They left their fishing boats. And so I thought, so I gave everything away. I gave the motel away, and I sold that little house, and went to Arneson's church there on what was it, 216? In Alderwood. And so I went to church there, and a lady said they were building a new church. And she said, I had a vision last night of a man coming and giving us the money to put the roof on the church. And man, that hit me, and I said, that's me. I didn't say nothing to anybody. But after church, I went up to Arnes and I said, who's that lady that said she had that vision? Oh, that's Sister Burgess. He said, here, I'll introduce you. Oh, he said, she's already gone home. She gets a ride with the Stockmans. So he said, she'll be back tonight. Okay, I said, I'll come back. So I came back that night, and she said, so he introduced us, and then she says, you're the man. And I said, what man? She said, you're going to give us the money to put the roof on the church. And I said, me? I said, I got no money. I said, I literally gave everything away. And she said, no, she said, that was you. And I said, well, how can you tell it was me? She looked at me and says, I can tell by your eyes. And I thought, wow. So then I said, what else did you see? Well, she says, he gave me the word Montana. And I thought, boy, this is a con game. I came from North Dakota, and she figured this Montana, and they're going to try to work and get some money out of me, because I was giving a lot of stuff away, and they were going to get some money out of me and for the church roof. So the Lord spoke to me, sell that little house, which I told you, $79.50. So when I put that for sale, I put it in the Limited Enterprise, and it only comes out Wednesdays. And I didn't get one call when the paper came out. And it was a big bill for me, $10 or $15 to put the ad in, whatever it was, you know. And then Monday, when the new paper's really coming out, a guy calls up and says, oh, I saw your ad in the paper. He says, I'd like to see the house. So I said, oh boy, I was all excited. So we go out to look at the house, and when we look at the house, he says, huh, I live in a better house than this now. So I thought, wow, that's okay. I was all excited to sign papers. I thought, selling that house. Then I said, so we all went our way, but he brought a friend along, Joe Adicott. His name was George, I remember that, and he brought along a friend named Joe Adicott. 3 days later, I get a call. I don't know if you remember or not, but he says, I came out with George to look at the house. He says, my name is Joe Adicott. He says, I'd be interested. Boy, my faith went up again, see. And he said, I don't have much money, but he says, I could put down, I've got a fishing motor. It was a big one, 25 horse or something, you know. And he said, I could put that down. And I said, what's it worth? And he said, he says, I'd like $450. And had the house advertised for 7,500, but he didn't see the ad, see. So I said, well, yeah, I said, I'll take the motor for the down payment and then we'll finance the rest. So I went down to Metropolitan Federal Savings and Loan in Seattle, applied for a loan, and we were going to get a $7,500 loan with this guy, $450 down. And then, man, nothing happened, and it was getting a long time, and I wanted to call. Lord said, just wait. So I waited, and finally I called. And they looked and said, no, there's no application here for that house or anybody by that name or anything else, neither the seller or the buyer. And I tell you, I cried. Everything fell apart. I told you she had said the word Montana.
Yeah.
So then I asked this guy, I said, well, Joe, I said, why would you give away a fishing motor? I said, don't you like fishing? I said, I like fishing. And he said, yes, but I do too. But he said, my brother's got a boat from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. That's where the big boating capital was for boats at that time. And he said, I can use his boat anytime I want, and that's a big boat, and I don't have to use the little kicker boats. It was a cabin cruiser. So I said, well, are you from Wisconsin? Me? No. He says, I'm from Montana. Bingo, then everything fit. So then I had that motor, and I came up here. Say, let's see, that was, I sold that. And then I think I was already living here in Bellingham.
No, you'd have been, because you're putting the roof on the church there. You must have been living in Linwood.
Well, I was living there, but then I think we moved because then that
Stevens. But this has been before Karen.
Well, I had the motor, and I brought it up here to Bellingham, and I went fishing. And I went fishing down there at the park in Bellingham, and where that restaurant used to be, used to overlook, there was a boat ramp there. And I went fishing there every day.
Anyhow, why don't you finish the story? So what happened with the boat motor in the house?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So then I went fishing all the time. And then there was this other guy that was there every day going fishing. And so we got acquainted, talking. It was George Vreeling. And he said, why don't we go out fishing together? I said, okay. And then we went fishing together, and he owned the Wilds Lake Trading Post. And then he just got cheated out of the Wilds Lake Trading Post by that Runyon bunch from Nebraska. So he said, well, let's go partners. And so...
yeah, but what happened to the house? You never explained that all the way.
Which house?
The house in Alderwood. So your guy gave the motor and you applied for a loan.
No, that was... Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't finish that. That's right. So then I thought, man, this is nothing's working. So a little while later, the phone rang. And I said, oh, she said, oh, I'm so sorry. He said, I apologize, but he said, you know what? He said, that loan went through.
This is the banker said this?
Yeah, and he said, I'm the manager here. He said, and the secretary put it on my desk, and we looked all over and we couldn't find nothing, so we thought it was non-existent. It's here. He said, you can come and get it and get your check. So I went down and I got the check, and I owed 50 some yet on the house, so I got $2,000 out of it. So I gave the church $1,000, and I paid all my bills with the other $1,000. And Montana was covered with the guy who came from Montana, which the lady had seen. She had seen me in the vision. This was all just like clockwork, fit together as only God can do. So, and then I got in the Wilds Lake Trading Post. And then, well, I was with Karen at Slough Stevens, so when we moved up here, I was with Karen already then.
No, that would have been too early. So you would have, if you were at the Alderwood house, you would have probably then been in the Linwood house, the two-story one with Luella when that happened. Because when you were going to Arneson's church, weren't you still in Linwood? Because
Yeah.
when you went to Lake Stevens, you moved Lake
I
Stevens
went
with
to,
Karen. We used to go to a church in Snohomish.
Well, Lake Stevens Road. No, I was with Karen because we got the. I met Ken Cook. Don't remember. Oh, with the honeymoon, I met Ken Cook because Karen had
Right.
worked under her nose, and then I started wrecking his trucks and made good money in that.
Yeah, but that was at Lake Stevens.
Yes.
Right.
So I went from Alderwood. No.
Well, I've been Linwood with the split level house. You went to Lake Stevens. That's where
Yes.
we moved. Yeah.
And then from there up to
Aldershot.
Aldrich. Next question.
Oh, well, it's okay. So when you lived in Lake Stevens, do you remember who was born while you lived in Lake Stevens?
Rita,
No, Rita was born already.
was she born?
Yeah, she was born in Linwood.
Oh, no. See, I was with Karen. That's right.
Would have probably been Nancy.
Must have been Nancy. Well, I come up here in 71, so it had to be Nancy and Dee Dee.
And Steve, I think. Steve,
I
think,
don't
might have
know
been
where
born.
Steve was born.
I think Steve might have been born in Lake Stevens, I think. But Everett probably.
Well, I was then selling, I was hauling the sawdust to Liza Lake. See, I got involved with Cook, and then I bought trucks from him, bought an old Studebaker, and then I went back to North Dakota and got a brand new pickup with a dump on it. And the first year I hauled 2 cords of wood and had little 3/4 ton pickup with a dump on it, and they weigh 4,800 pounds. So that was 9,600 pounds on a pickup recommended for 1,500. So it was, the shocks were out that you could go like this on that truck. I mean, it was just bouncing. And one of the children, when they were born, I was driving Karen down to the Everett Hospital, and she said, "Oh, slow down." She said, "It's shaking so bad." It was shaking her. She was afraid we're going to shake the baby out before we get to, and I was trying to drive fast because that was our main car already. Well, I had another car. I don't know. Oh, that's when I got the Oldsmobile, because Gordon was with me. I always went back then to North Dakota and got the car. Had quite a trip there one time. After your mom died, I went back to North Dakota and for the funeral, took her and buried her there. And let's see, I took, I bought a Bonneville car. We moved out with you and Jolene and everything I owned in that Bonneville car. And we were coming back, driving through, and that was a brand new one. It was 58. See, and I moved out here in 59.
That
so
would have been, no, that would have been Lloyd and Jolene.
Huh?
That would have been Lloyd and Jolene in 1958.
Yes,
Because I was born till 60.
And then I was driving, and Montana was safe and reasonable, and you could see 50 miles down the road on Montana if you go through there, Charlie. There's nothing, It's a big, big state. If you drive from here to Cullum, half of it is the distance you drive through Montana. I think it's 900 miles across, if I'm not mistaken. And so I was driving, 85 miles an hour. And I come over the hill, ooh, here's a state patrolman. So I just went on by, he looks over, goes like this. I passed the state patrol at 85 miles an hour, and they never stopped me and didn't give me a speeding ticket because it was safe and reasonable. And he must have thought 85 is reasonable. He's got a new car, let him run. That was funny. That, and then I went back and got that luxury sedan. I went back, I always got a new Chevy every year then, during insurance years, because I drove so many miles. And I had all new cars every year. I drove one car 78,000 miles in 1 year. It's a lot of miles.
Yeah.
And mostly gravel roads, Charlie. Because there was only 2 paved roads, Highway 13 and the one from Edgerly, I forget what that one was. Can't remember the number. I drove my motorcycle 114 miles an hour on that one. And I'm still here.
Yeah.
But, and then I brought that car out, and then again, that one I drove. Well, I went back to get a Chevy, and the Brost brothers, Hilmer was a friend of mine, and so was Wilbur, but Hilmer more. And then he said, "Oh, Lloyd," he says, "you're making big money now." He said, "You don't want to buy a Chevy. Buy this Oldsmobile." He said, "It's a demonstrator." He said, it had, well, just a couple of 100 miles on it or something. And I said, "No," I said, "that's too fancy a car." But he talked me into it, so I bought it. So I went and I got Mom, but I drove through the alley because I was humble and embarrassed that I had such a fancy car. And then Mom said, she had to go through Edgerly for something. She said, "Give me a ride in your new car." And that car was a 1964 model. Had automatic dimmer lights. You could change the radio with your feet. You could change it with the buttons. You could change it with automatic tuning. You had high and low automatic dimmers. You opened the trunk, lit automatic. Your seat raised automatic. The seat had heats in it. In '64. There's not much new stuff has come in since then. And then I drove that. And then when we were chunking up here at Cook and made good money there, I bought, I think, 380 trucks from him. I gave him $5,000. Well, I cut him up and paid him as I took him out, because he had just old trucks that he traded in, and then he'd sell parts off them, and he had a whole wrecking yard in the back, and he wanted to clean it out. So we drove up there all the time. I had a boom truck, I had a hauling truck, and well, he was a truck business, and he sold me the trucks. And then I gave Gordon that car. I gave it to him for a Christmas present. I think it was, if I remember right. But both him and Jean are both, I guess, deceased. I put that marriage together. He had an unfortunate marriage with he was a case like Betty's, unfortunately. No, it's so sad. She is just sad. But he had a wife, and she was very fat, and he said 11 years were married, and he said every night she peed in bed. And then for Christmas, Easter, we bought her a new dress, and she used it she wore it till it was dirty, went to the shower and dropped it in the shower and showered over it, and it was the end of it. That's how people appreciate stuff when you give it to them. And then they got divorced, and she married another guy, which I knew from the church. And then Gordon lived in my little house in the back. I had a little house in the back, and we fixed it up, and he had a bed and everything there on his own. And this lady kept walking by the front, and she was a basketball. She had 2 brothers, university teachers. One, the University of Washington, the other one, I think, in a big university in Spokane. And so I was wondering who she was, so I walked out one day to the mailbox, and I said, "Who are you?" Oh, she said, "I live right up here." She said, "My name is Jean Olson." And this is how marvelous Scott is. He, his first father-in-law was named Ole. His first wife was named Ole. His second wife was named Jean. His first wife was named Jean. Second wife, father-in-law was Ole, and the second one was, and
So you're saying the second father-in-law name was Gene, and his wife was named Jean, or no?
no, the first wife's name was Jean, and the second wife's name was Jean, G-A-E-A-N-C.
Oh, okay.
And the first father-in-law was Ole, and the second father, one was Ole Nordquist, one was Ole Olson. And then I said, well, Gordon did a job. We went out to dinner, and he was single and really feeling bad because he was, divorced and single like Simon and that. I feel real sorry for people because I went through that twice. That's a tough road. So he came in the back door, she came in the front door, and I said, "This is Jean and this is Gordon." And I heard the voice of God. He says, "You just introduced him to his wife." So I went in the bedroom, I shut the door, and I said, "Karen," I said, "I just introduced those two, and the Lord told me that they're going to get married." And they did get married, and they lived together until they died. It was really amazing. Did you know Gordon?
Yeah, I remember a little bit, yeah.
He was a little,
He's a little slower.
yeah, he was a nice guy, but it's really tempting, Charlie, to have a handicap like that, like I do all the work around here.
Yeah.
She can't do
Anyhow, so when you moved up to Bellingham, you moved up with Karen and a bunch of kids.
that. Yeah, 7, probably, or something like that. And then there was,
I think Rose and Sally were probably born in Bellingham.
so there was 4 and 3 from her, and then the other 2, so that was the 9, yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. You could interview Betty, and
Okay, so what brought you to Bellingham? Do you remember what brought you to Bellingham?
well, that would have been, what brought me to Bellingham? That would have been Ken
Laremont
Cook.
Manor?
And then we bought that Laremont property. But see, there was a big hang up there. There was a guy out here that was famous with that famous wrestler.
Kaninsky or something like that.
Yeah, but the guy that owned Richfield property.
I don't recall.
He's the guy that sold it. There was a guy named Elwood Grundy. He was the spiritual man. And I can't remember his name now. I was trying the other day to think of it. And he sold the Richfield that property because he had that shore, what they needed for the ships. And he had the money. And then they disagreed on their philosophy on the Christianity. And they both kind of wanted to run it their way. And then then Ken said, "Let's go up and look at the property." He said, "Maybe we'll buy it." So we went up, and Grundy said, "Well," he said, "sounds interesting, let me pray about it." So then he prayed about it, and he said, "God confirmed it to me. He said he wants you to come up here and buy that property." So we made a deal. I mean, that was a verbal deal. Then we went to not Douglas, just can't think of his name. And then we went to the other one, and then he agreed to sell us at $15,000. Remember that? And then we went back to the other one, and he said, "Oh, well, if he's selling to you, I'm not selling to you. And then the deal fell through. So then we ended up, one of them changed her mind, and Elwood said he had some other ministry to go to, so he signed off, and the other guy signed off, and we paid him $15,000 because I sold my motorhome to pay that $15,000. See, Ken and I got the motorhomes. We went back and got motorhomes from Wisconsin. I think we went five. It must have been five. Went back and we'd get 5 motorhomes, and he'd put them on his lot, and he had a motorhome agency with Winnebago. And I'll think of his name one day, but he. So then we bought him out, and then Grundy said, well, he said, I'll just sign mine off. He said, I don't want money. He said, he had some other work. I don't remember where he went. He went to some other work. And that's what brought me to Bellingham was the Learmont and the Bible school that we were going to establish there, which boy, Charlie, I worked hours and hours on writing that Constitution and bylaws. And when I submitted it to the IRS, they turned it down. And I prayed about it, and the Lord said, there's 2 words in there. And I read it again, and they were outlined in blue. And I took those words out and then sent it in again. And Charlie, that is a corporation that owns a church by the people that give the money. They get stock in it. And if they don't like the church, and if there's a church split, they can sell it out and go out. A marvelous plan that God has got. And I believe with all of my heart, that's the way Jesus is going to run the 1,000 years. We will, he will tell us what he wants and how it was going to be done, and it's going to be done that way. He's a businessman too.
Okay.
I felt, I one time was praying, I thought I should go to Africa because a missionary had an African call. And then I thought, well, do I want to take your mother and these children, you, and I think I had 3 children, to Africa with all those black people, and they'd all look at me. And then the Lord said, no, I just wanted to test you to see if you'll try, if you would be willing. So he said, I want you here as an evangelist. And I don't know, to this day, I'm not an evangelist. I mean, that's what I think is an evangelist, but I don't know what is an evangelist. I've stated it. I want to get back to reading. I'm getting rid of the coins here now and going to start some heavy studying again, because it's such great times that there's such opportunities in the spiritual world now that is amazing. There's just things happening.
Okay, I'm going to turn it off here.